Before Egypt, before Greece, before Rome, there was Sumer, between two mighty rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Humanity took its first step into civilization. This land, known as Mesopotamia, was once a harsh desert. But when the rivers flooded, they left behind rich soil, perfect for farming. Here, over 7,000 years ago, scattered tribes began to settle. They learned to tame the waters, to build canals, to grow crops. They built homes of mud brick, gathered into villages, and formed the first organized communities. It was the beginning of something entirely new, the age of civilization. As generations passed, the small villages grew into towns, and those towns became cities. Eridu, Lagash, and Uruk, the first cities in human history. Each one ruled by its own leaders, guarded by its own gods. Uruk would become the greatest of them all, a city of tens of thousands of people, surrounded by massive walls that stretched for miles. Temples rose like mountains over the plain, the first ziggurats, homes of the gods on earth. In these cities, people traded grain, copper, and lapis lazuli. They brewed beer, crafted tools, and built temples. The world's first urban life had begun. But as life grew more complex, memory was no longer enough. Priests and merchants needed a way to record their goods, their offerings, their debts. And so, around 3200 BC, a revolutionary idea was born: writing. On small clay tablets, scribes pressed wedge-shaped marks using reeds. At first it was only for counting, but over time, those marks became symbols for words, for stories, for laws. This was cuneiform, the world's first written language. With it, humanity gained a new kind of power, the power to remember across generations, the power to record history. The people of Sumer believed their world was ruled by divine forces. Every storm, every harvest, every birth was guided by the gods. Each city had its protector: Enki of Eridu, Enlil of Nippur, and Inanna, the radiant goddess of Uruk. Temples dominated every city skyline. From their high terraces, priests observed the heavens, read omens, and offered sacrifices. Religion shaped every part of life, from law and labor to love and war. To serve the gods was to maintain balance in the world. To displease them meant chaos, flood, famine, and destruction. Within this divine order, human society took shape. At the top stood kings, the Lugal, the great man. He was both warrior and priest, ruling by the will of the gods. Beneath him were the priests and nobles, who managed temples and land. Then came the merchants, craftsmen, and farmers, the heart of Sumerian life. At the bottom were laborers and slaves, whose hands built the cities of clay and stone. Every role had meaning, every person a part of the grand design beneath the heavens. Through centuries of innovation, the Sumerians transformed human existence. They invented writing, government, mathematics, and the first schools. They created irrigation systems and the first codes of law. They mapped the stars, studied time, and dreamed of eternity. From this soil, humanity learned to think, to build, to dream. Sumer gave us our first stories, the myths of gods and heroes that still echo through time. From Sumer came Gilgamesh, the world's first epic, the tale of a king seeking immortality. Sumer was more than a civilization. It was the beginning of everything that would follow. From its cities rose Babylon, Assyria, and Persia. Its inventions spread across continents and millennia. Even today, when we write, govern, or build, we walk in the footsteps of Sumer. The rivers still flow, the ruins still stand beneath the sands, and the story of the first civilization still whispers through time. This was Sumer, the cradle of civilization. But this was only the beginning. In the next episode, kings will rise, empires will clash, and the ancient gods will rule the fate of men. This is the story of Sumer. Subscribe and continue the journey through the dawn of history. When the cities of Sumer grew strong, a new kind of power began to rise, the power of kings. At first, priests ruled in the name of the gods. They managed the temples, the harvests, and the rituals that kept the world in balance. But as the cities expanded and wars began, the people turned to warriors for protection. The temple ruler became the war leader, and the war leader became the king. The Sumerians called him the Lugal, the great man. He ruled not only by strength, but by divine authority. The gods had chosen him to lead, to fight, and to keep order in their name. By the year 2800 BC, the land of Sumer was filled with powerful city-states: Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Kish, Nippur, and Umma. Each had its own king, its own patron god, its own ambitions. But with ambition came conflict. The fertile land between the rivers could not be shared peacefully. And so began the first recorded wars in human history. On the clay tablets of Sumer, scribes recorded the names of these battles: the first soldiers, the first victories, the first empires born from conquest. Among these kings, one name shines brightest: Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. Half man, half god, he was said to be unmatched in strength and pride. His story became the world's first epic, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In it, the king seeks fame, defies the gods, and faces the truth of mortality. He befriends Enkidu, a wild man from the wilderness, only to lose him to death. And through loss, Gilgamesh learns what every human must: that immortality belongs only to the gods, but memory belongs to mankind. The tale of Gilgamesh is more than myth. It is the voice of a civilization discovering itself, its fears, its faith, its longing for meaning. While Gilgamesh ruled Uruk, other kings fought to expand their realms. Eannatum of Lagash carved his name into history as the world's first conqueror. He defeated the rival city of Umma and united much of Sumer under his banner. His victory was immortalized on the stele of the vultures, a carved stone showing soldiers marching in formation, priests leading rituals, and the god Ningirsu hovering above, blessing his chosen king. For the Sumerians, victory was never just military, it was divine. Every battle was fought under the eyes of the gods, but peace in Sumer never lasted. After Eannatum's death, the unity he built crumbled. The cities once again turned on each other: Uruk against Ur, Lagash against Umma. Ambition, greed, and divine rivalry consumed the land. Kings claimed to rule for the gods, yet they destroyed each other's temples. The land between the rivers became a battlefield of faith and power. Then came Lugal-Zaggisi, king of Umma. A man of relentless ambition, he conquered city after city until only Uruk remained. He declared himself king of the land, ruler of all Sumer. For a moment, it seemed he had achieved what no man before him could: the dream of one Sumerian empire. But his glory would not last. From the north, a new power was rising, the kingdom of Akkad. And its ruler was a man named Sargon. Sargon began as a cupbearer to a Sumerian king, a servant, but destiny favored him. Through cunning, courage, and relentless ambition, he seized power. He conquered Kish, Uruk, Ur, every city of Sumer, and he defeated Lugal-Zaggisi, chaining him and parading him through the streets of Uruk. In one lifetime, Sargon created something the world had never seen before: an empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. He called himself King of the Four Quarters of the World. Under Sargon, Sumer and Akkad were united, a fusion of two cultures, two languages, one destiny. The Akkadian Empire became the first true empire in human history. Its rulers inherited Sumerian writing, religion, and art, but they spoke a new language and worshipped new gods alongside the old. Sumerian cuneiform evolved into Akkadian script. Sumerian hymns were sung in Akkadian temples. Even as one culture conquered another, their souls became intertwined. The torch of civilization passed from Sumer to Akkad, but the flame remained the same. Yet no empire lasts forever. After a century of power, rebellion and drought began to tear Akkad apart. The great empire collapsed under the weight of its own greatness. The Sumerians, though weakened, endured. Their cities rose again under new kings. Ur would shine once more as a capital of rebirth. But the storms of history were not done. New peoples were coming from the mountains and the deserts, and the old gods of Sumer would soon fall silent. Still, from the chaos of war and empire, something eternal was born. The idea of kingship, the belief that one man, chosen by the gods, could unite the world. That idea began in Sumer, and it has never truly died. Every crown, every throne, every empire that followed owed its shadow to the kings of Sumer. The kings are gone. Their ziggurats crumble. But their stories remain, carved in stone, written in clay, echoing through time. From Gilgamesh to Sargon, from priest to emperor, they laid the foundations of human power. This was Sumer, and this was the age of kings, gods, and empires. In the next episode, the story nears its end. We will witness the fall of Sumer, the rise of Babylon, and the legacy that shaped all of human civilization. The rivers still flow, the stars still shine, but the voices of the first kings whisper only through the sands. This is the story of Sumer. Subscribe and continue the journey through the dawn of history. Sumer, the first civilization episode. 3. The Fall and the Legacy. When the age of the great kings passed, Sumer entered its twilight. The cities that once shone like stars across the plains of Mesopotamia began to fade. Uruk, Ur, Lagash. Their walls still stood, but their power was broken. The empire of Sargon had fallen, and the gods of Sumer grew silent. But even in decline, Sumer was not yet dead. Its spirit lingered. In its temples, in its language, in the hearts of its scribes. For centuries, the people of the south still called themselves the children of Sumer. The third dynasty of Ur, the last glory from the ashes, rose one final dynasty, the third dynasty of Ur. Its king, Ur-Nammu, rebuilt the land and restored the old gods. He raised ziggurats higher than ever before, monuments of faith and defiance. The ziggurat of Ur still towers today, a silent witness to his reign. Ur-Nammu brought peace, prosperity, and law. He created one of the first legal codes in history, centuries before Hammurabi. On clay tablets, he wrote, "To bring justice to the land, I established order for the orphan and the widow." It was a golden age reborn, but it would not last. The invasion from the east. From beyond the mountains, strangers came, nomads from Elam, and desert tribes seeking fertile land. They saw the wealth of Sumer and descended upon it like a storm. City after city fell. Ur tried to resist, but even the might of Ur-Nammu's successors could not stop the tide. The old gods were silent. The irrigation canals dried. The once mighty rivers turned against their people, flooding or starving the land. The empire of Ur, the last Sumerian kingdom, was no more. The fall of Ur. In the ruins of Ur, priests still prayed to Inanna and Enki, but their voices echoed unanswered through empty temples. The idols were carried away, the palaces looted, the archives burned.
The storms swept the land, the people wept for their city. Its king wept, its gods fled to the heavens. Ur is destroyed. Who can rebuild it?
No other text from the ancient world captures sorrow so human, so eternal. The Sumerians, who once believed themselves eternal, had learned that even civilizations can die. The Babylonian dawn. But history never truly ends, it transforms. From the ruins of Sumer rose new cities, new rulers, new tongues. The Babylonians came, inheriting Sumer's land and Sumer's gods. They prayed to Marduk, but still remembered Enlil. They spoke Akkadian, but still wrote in cuneiform. They built upon the foundation the Sumerians had laid. To the Babylonians, the Sumerians were the ancients, the wise ones who first learned the ways of the gods. They studied their writings, their astronomy, their laws. Even the Epic of Gilgamesh was preserved and retold in Babylonian script. The first civilization lived on through memory, language of the gods. Though no longer spoken, the Sumerian tongue became sacred. For nearly 1,300 years after Sumer's fall, it was taught to scribes as the language of the gods. Priests recited Sumerian hymns in temples from Babylon to Nineveh. Kings inscribed Sumerian titles on their monuments to legitimize their rule. In this way, Sumer became more than a nation. It became a symbol, a foundation stone of human culture, a voice whispering across millennia, the echo of the flood. Even the stories of Sumer endured, reshaped, retold, reborn. The Sumerians wrote of a great flood that destroyed the world, and of a man who built a boat to save life upon it. His name was Ziusudra, the Sumerian Noah. Centuries later, his tale would echo in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and thousands of years after that, in the Book of Genesis. The roots of human myth, of morality and divine judgment, all trace back to this land between two rivers, science and the stars. The Sumerians gave us more than stories. They gave us science. They mapped the heavens, dividing the sky into constellations we still use today. They created the sexagesimal system, 60 seconds in a minute, 360 degrees in a circle. They built the foundations of mathematics, writing, government, and law. Every clock, every city, every law book carries their legacy. We live in their shadow, even if we have forgotten their names. The eternal cycle. And yet, their story is also a warning. The Sumerians built wonders, but they could not escape the cycles of nature and power. Drought, war, ambition. The same forces that build civilizations also destroy them. Their canals turned to dust, their ziggurats to ruins. Time swept across the plains of Mesopotamia and buried their cities beneath layers of earth. But beneath that dust, their words endured, pressed into clay, waiting to be found. Rediscovery. Thousands of years later, archaeologists unearthed those words. The tablets of Ur, the walls of Uruk, the stories of Gilgamesh. The world finally remembered its forgotten ancestors. Through their discoveries, the Sumerians spoke again. From the cradle of civilization to the modern world, they told us who we are and where we began. Finale. The legacy of Sumer civilizations rise and fall, but ideas endure. The Sumerians gave birth to the concept of cities, laws, and kings. They turned clay into knowledge, and knowledge into power. They taught humanity to remember, to write, to dream, to reach for the gods. Though their temples crumble and their names fade, their spirit lives in every city, every book, every dream of progress. We are all, in some way, the children of Sumer. The rivers still flow, the stars still shine, but the voices of Sumer whisper through eternity. This was the first civilization. This was Sumer. The rivers still flow, the stars still shine, but the voices of Sumer whisper through eternity. This was the first civilization. This was Sumer. If this journey through the dawn of history moved you, leave a like, share it with history lovers, and subscribe to keep the flame of ancient knowledge alive. The story continues in the rise of Babylon.